Hey guys, today I decided to talk about everything that I've watched and read in the month of May, which I can't believe is over already. It's just crazy, so let's get into it. The first book I wanted to talk about is called The Girls of Riyadh. I don't have it here right now because I got it from the library. And I read this because it seems like a mixture of Gossip Girl and Sex and the City set in an Arab country. So this is all about a group of 4 friends who are all Muslim girls, and they are in their early 20s or something like that, though they're all starting to, trying to get married, or maybe are studying and stuff like that. And this is all about how their life goes and what they struggle with, everything. So I was really excited for this book because I wanted to learn a lot from it, and unfortunately that didn't work out. I must say that the book was very interesting and entertaining, but there were just so many aspects that I just didn't get because I don't know enough about the Arab culture and the different rules. So for example, I'm not quite sure about when a woman is supposed to wear her like the veil and stuff. I don't know what you call that in English, but I just don't know what the rules are. So sometimes I'm like, well, he can't, she must be wearing that, but then someone's touching her hair and I don't get that. So there were just certain aspects that I absolutely didn't understand, maybe just because I am ignorant. So unfortunately, I would say this book is not great if you want to just get into it and just get to know this culture. It's rather written for people who already know about the culture, and it's just a book that shows you all the things that are wrong with it. But if you don't know the culture already, you just won't pick up on a lot of things. So for that reason, I gave it 3 out of 5 stars, just because I think it's not targeted towards a Western reader, and in that sense, you don't really get all that it has to offer. And I felt like a little bit of footnotes or something like that would have been super helpful, but they didn't include that. Also, the writing style is a little bit different because it is written in emails, so I guess this is kind of like how it was really published, in email form, and that way it has that kind of Sex and the City feel because it's very episodic, but on the other hand you really miss things in between, you don't really get close to the characters at all, and I kept mixing them up, to be honest, because I just couldn't tell some of them apart. And I got confused, even though I read it in just 3 days or something like that, still got confused with the different storylines, like who did what and what happened to whom and stuff like that. So that was quite confusing for me. So yeah, as I said, 3 stars for me. The next book I want to talk about was an audiobook I got from the library, and that is called Straight White Male. And I was very disappointed with this book. Like, when I first started to listen to it, I was ready to just break up with it after the first 2 chapters, because I thought it would be a very ironic book that is, just makes fun of the straight wild male storyline. But for me, it didn't. It was just another story about another straight male, and it was boring. And this story is all about a rich guy who published a few novels and now lives from writing screenplays, and he has to go back to his family in England and to teach at a university because he still spends a lot more money than he makes. So he has a lot of debt, and to kind of pay that, he has to go back to his hometown and stuff like that. And yeah, he's just basically the biggest fuck in the world. He has a horrible opinion of women, and he uses a lot of cuss words, and he's just an asshole basically. And in the end, you're kind of made to feel sorry for him, but I didn't. So yeah, I got into it, but I still missed that whole irony part. Like, that was what the book promised me, like that would make fun of things, and it didn't. So I gave this one 2.5 stars because the writing style was gorgeous and there were a lot of very clever jokes and stuff like that. But then on the other hand, he was like always cussing and always thinking about sex and stuff like that, and it just wasn't my cup of tea. The next book I got from the library is The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman. I just can't talk, as always. But that one was very enjoyable. I had heard that some people think it's not so good because it is kind of episodic and you just get a few glimpses of the childhood of this boy who grows up on a graveyard, and he's adopted by ghosts. And I heard those critiques, and so I was prepared and I enjoyed it very much. Like, I feel this is a good book if you want to read it to your kids when they're a little bit older and they're into kind of like ghost stories that aren't really scary but rather cute but still very adventurous. I think that is exactly what this book is. You get the adventure, you get the ghosts that aren't creepy but they're just very cute and adorable, and the boy, but he makes a lot of friends on at this graveyard, and there's all these interesting stories that are connected with it, and then there's an overarching storyline which might not be like perfect. I can see that it has flaws, but it was still very enjoyable, and I think for kids this is totally enough. You don't need more depth to it. And so I did like it a lot. I think I gave it like 4 stars, and I really enjoyed reading it. It was great for just a weekend, very chill and sweet. The next book I actually have here right now, and it is The Sea of Tranquility. I can't say it, Tranquility, by Katja Millet, or something like that. And this is a book that I got for my birthday last year, like 2015, 16? I don't even remember, 16 I think. And so I kept waiting to read this book because I wanted to really be in the mood for it so I can absolutely love it. And this is what happened. So I gave this book a 5 out of 5 stars. Like, it was perfect for me personally. This is a love story, and it is kind of YA because the characters are still in school, but it is a dark love story. So this is about a girl that we get to know as Nastya Kashnikov, but it isn't her real name. So I feel like this is not a spoiler. It was quite obvious. But she is moving to a new town to her aunt, and she's going to a new school. And she's not talking. Like, she stopped talking and nobody really knows why. And you know that there's this whole tragedy in her past, and you know that she was a very good piano player and that something happened that destroyed her left hand and now she can't play anymore. And that kind of put her in a very depressive mood because that was basically all she cared about. And this takes place, I think, 3 years after that. And so she gets to this new school, and there is Josh. And Josh is a very lonely boy because all of his family basically died. Like, the only person left is his grandfather, but he knows that he will die soon as well because he has I don't quite remember, but he has a disease, so he's going to die soon. And so Josh is very lonely because people try to stay away from him because they feel like they don't know what to say to him because there has been so much tragedy in his family. So these two meet and they are kind of drawn together, and I really love this book. I really love these kind of more dark romances. It had some Silver Linings Playbook kind of vibes for me. I haven't read the book yet, but I've seen the movies. the movie, and I loved it. And sometimes this felt very similar, but with the characters switched. So I always felt like Josh was a little bit like Jennifer Lawrence and, you know, stuff like that. But it's very interesting. I just loved the characters so much, but I also liked that there was a slight mystery, because you never really knew whether Josh had anything to do with Nastia's past, or whether it is just kind of like fate or something like that. But yeah, I just really loved it, and I was in this book within a couple of pages, and it really kept me hooked till the very end. Like, I had to finish it. It was so good. I really loved it. And if you're into these more like dramatic, dark romances with a little bit of sex, but not too much, like it's not graphic, but you know, at some point there is sex in the book. Yeah, I just really recommend this. It was great. And then the next book is another one from the library, and that is Lament by Maggie Stiefvater. Now, I saw this and I was never interested in this whole Shiver trilogy, just because I really don't like werewolves. And I obviously know about the Raven Boys, but they don't have the books in my library yet, so I was always wondering whether I should get them and whether I would enjoy them. So when I saw this, I thought, well, I have never heard anything about this book for some reason. I'm going to pick it up. It's super short and, you know, you can't go wrong with that. Now, this is a book about a girl called Deirdre, and she plays an instrument, a harp. And there is this kind of thing at her school where she's supposed to play, and she's super nervous, and then she meets Luke. And Luke is a very strange boy, but there's definitely chemistry, and he's a little bit awkward, like, I don't know, he's just weird. And so it takes off from there. This is a book about fairies, which I don't think I've read a lot of books about fairies, but I very much enjoyed it because I like the kind of dark fairies, or the fae, or whatever you call that. Yeah, I very much enjoyed this book. One thing that really frustrated me was the, you know, like the best friend that realizes that he loves her thing. I hate that so much. So that definitely dodged a star for me. But I think I gave this around 3 stars as well. It was enjoyable, but it wasn't like mind-blowingly different or anything like that. It was just a cute, fluffy story. That definitely didn't solve too much, because there is another book in this series, and there was supposed to be a 3rd book which never came out. So I think I will not continue with this, just because the 2nd book focuses a lot on the best friend, and I really don't care. So yeah, I guess this will be the end for me, but I enjoyed this book. And then the last book I wanted to talk about is 100 Shadows, by someone that I would call Hwang Jung-yoin, something like that. No, that was absolutely wrong, I know that. But this is a book that I got in my April month box, or like May month box. The last novel one that there was before the May one. This is a very short book. It reminded me a lot of The Vegetarian, just because it is a Korean author as well. Now, this is about 2 people, and they have this kind of relationship, which is not really romantic yet, but maybe someday. But they live in a slum in Seoul, and there is this weird thing with these shadows rising, whatever that means. And so this book was a little bit of a disappointment for me as well. As with The Vegetarian, I just don't like these kind of super weird books that don't explain anything and that I have, you know, to figure out all by myself, because I just need a little bit of direction. And with this book, you just don't get any closure. It's like weird, done. So you get this whole shadow writhing thing, and I've heard that this is like a metaphor for depression, but on the other hand that really doesn't make sense, and I didn't get it. I don't know, maybe I'm too stupid for these books, or I just don't really understand their culture or anything. I don't know. But yeah, I gave it 3 stars. The writing style was fantastic, like absolutely enjoyable. The characters were super awkward. Like I think that is just like a culture thing. Like these guys were so awkward. But yeah, just the whole shadow thing, like if that wasn't part of the book, I would have enjoyed it so much more. And then this whole book is basically just a telling of different stories. Like whenever these characters meet, someone is telling a story about someone else. So you don't really get any development in their storyline. You just hear them talk about other people who have experienced something with their shadows, which no one really explains. So yeah, that one just wasn't for me. I just think I'm done with the Korean literature. I don't know. Now for movies and TV shows, we finished, I think, the 4th season of Suits, which was super frustrating, like very tense and very frustrating. I cried at the end of this season because I was so frustrated, but it was very good, but just frustrating. And then still watching Downton Abbey. I'm in season 2. I started rewatching The OC because I really needed a pick-me-up. I'm currently on season 1. I don't know whether I will continue now, but yeah, it's just so addictive. I love The OC. And let me check for movies. So we went to see Gold with Matthew McConaughey. This is kind of similar to The Wolf of Wall Street, which I didn't enjoy too much. I think Gold is a bit better because it's not that crazy Hollywood-like. I very much enjoyed Matthew McConaughey as always, but also like the side characters were very good. And there were some twists and turns, especially at the end, that you didn't really see coming. I felt like the storytelling was done very well, but it's not like a major movie. Like, you don't have to go see it in the cinema. I think it would be still interesting to watch it when it comes out on DVD and stuff. But it was a good movie if you're interested in that kind of, you know, when people get rich and just that overwhelming being rich, whatever, you know, money. If that's your thing, watch that movie. And then this week we went to see Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, which was great. I feel like it's not as good as the first one, but kind of is. Like, in the middle part it lacks a little bit, but the end is perfection. It gets super actiony, tense, you really want to know what's going on, and you fear about all these characters that are so precious, and yeah, the end was just what I wanted, like really. Even made me cry a little bit. But in between it was just a little bit too funny. I felt like there were some scenes that could have been a little bit more epic, but then there was a joke thrown in there and you're like, well, okay, guess it's not epic at all. I just felt like that was a little bit too much. Like, I need a bit more balance with that. But other than that, I really enjoyed that movie. I think that's pretty much all I have to talk about for this month. Right now I'm trying to read Sense and Sensibility by Jane Austen, but for some reason me and this book just doesn't work. Like, I've read it before when I was around 18, and I remember that I wasn't in love with it. And right now I'm really struggling because I'm not loving it. And right now I'm just in a reading slump a little bit. So we'll see how that goes on. I will tell you next month. I hope you enjoyed this. Have a lovely day and I will talk to you soon. Bye!
Mm-hmm.